Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is tramping out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. I have seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the even dews and damps. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamps. His day is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with the glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free, while God is marching on.
Hey, everybody. What a song to get you in the mood to talk Constitution, right? Hey, Live, Mary, congratulations to your daughter-in-law. John, good to see you, John. Echo, Al, Ian, Cheryl, V, Anthony, Yorga. Yes, Yorga, but I can't play Elvis. Carolina, Vicky, it's good to see all y'all. So, let's see, where do we start? I have a video. I guess I'll start with that because we're waiting for a few others. And 14th Amendment, I think it might be a little controversial tonight. We'll see what happens. Let me see. Left this video. And I'll probably, Anthony, did I say hello to you? Hello, Anthony. I guess I can speed it up. Maybe. Nope.
Oh, let me in.
What?
I said, oh, let me in. I'm ready for controversial. Let's
Oh,
go.
cool. Okay. Well, this is, hey, Cola, good to see you. This
Hey,
is from
Cola.
the 10th Amendment. And I think y'all are the ones that gave me that channel. So here we go.
Here we go.
And thank you for coming up, Dee.
Of course.
That's not it. There it is.
Your safe space.
Okay. Do your thing. It's slow, y'all. Sorry. Do that. Oops. Can I speed it up after? Yes. Okay. Speed. Because it's a little lengthy. Not too bad, but wait. You need to get out of the way. Okay.
Tyranny can only enter our country from our own great men. Benjamin Rush knew the real danger, even at the height of the war for independence. The founders understood that history is littered with power-hungry rulers who use deception. Sometimes they'll use false flags. They might exploit a real crisis, or provoke one too. And when all else fails, they'll just pretend to love liberty. But it's all just a scam to expand their power and control. So on this episode, it's the real Trojan horse used all throughout history. But first of all, before getting to that, welcome. And thank you for joining me here on the path to liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. We've all heard the term Trojan horse. It comes from ancient Greek mythology and the Trojan War, where soldiers supposedly hid inside a giant wooden horse to gain access to the city and burn it down. The founders and the old revolutionaries, well, they understood that this was much more than just mythology. It was a real political strategy used all throughout history for power and control. For example, in his very famous 1766 sermon celebrating the repeal of the Stamp Act, the Reverend Jonathan Mayhew, well, he called the entire internal taxation scheme of the British a deceptive tactic, a snare broken. The Stamp Act to him was a perfect Trojan horse because it was sold to the colonists under the guise of something good. After the very terrible 7 Years' War, it was there supposedly to pay for their national security, something we all hear all the time today as well. But the real goal was to pay for the beginnings of tyranny and establish a permanent standing army, the destruction of liberty from within. Here's how he put it. And the golden temptation, it is said, took with too many for a while, a Pandora's box or Trojan horse indeed. And the previous fall, in his widely read and very influential broadside, urging non-compliance with the Stamp Act, the penman of the American Revolution, John Dickinson, he urged the people to not fall for this trap. And they listened to him. It worked. He said, if you quietly bend your necks to that yoke, you prove yourselves ready to receive any bondage to which your lords and masters shall please to subject you. But back to Mayhew. He understood that even after the repeal, this single victory, this was not the end of the story, not even close. He continued his sermon with a warning to the people to not let their guard down, really a repeat of a quote, the desperate warning from the priest in Virgil's epic. Well, it is insanity to think that this is over. I can't read the original text, but here's the general translation in English. O wretched citizens, what so great a madness is this? Do you believe the enemies have gone away? Or do you think that any gifts of the Greeks lack treachery? Now, this strategy of fake gifts and other deception to gain power and control, this wasn't new, of course, for Mayhew and the revolutionaries. They knew that history is filled with tyrants using such pretexts, what we might call false flags today, in order to expand their power. The master playbook comes right from Machiavelli in The Prince, which is first written, I think, at 1513. It was published a couple of decades after that. Now, he documented how in Athens, this is 6th century BC, Pisistratus, if I can pronounce that, he actually used maybe one of the earliest examples of a false flag. He literally staged an attack on himself to establish a standing army and eventually seize total power and control. Machiavelli put it like this: as to the employment of deceit and cunning, I give the following instances. Pisistratus, after the victory which he had gained over the people of Megara, was greatly beloved by the people of Athens. One morning, he went forth from his house wounded, and charged the nobility with having attacked him from jealousy, and demanded permission to keep a guard of armed followers for his protection, which was accorded him. Now, in Cato's letters number 76, Thomas Gordon explained that the fatal danger wasn't the final army. In fact, the establishment of the guard was just a tiny force of 50 men, armed with nothing more than, I think, just wood and clubs. Here's how Gordon put it. Pisistratus, having procured from the city of Athens 50 fellows armed only with cudgels for the security of his person from false and lying dangers, improved them into an army, and by it enslaved that free state. And Machiavelli understood this. And if Machiavelli's saying it, it really holds a lot of punch. One tiny step is all that an ambitious tyrant ever needs. He said this first step enabled him easily to attain such power that he soon after made himself tyrant of Athens. In the early years of the American Revolution, this is 1767, John Dickinson gave us a powerful example to show how rulers will also exploit a real crisis. They don't always need to fake these things. Sometimes bad stuff happens, but then they take that bad stuff. They never let a crisis go to waste because they then establish a single precedent to give them more power, and that single precedent eventually destroys freedom completely. Dickinson put it like this: Spain was once free. Their Cortes resembled our parliaments. No money could be raised on the subject without their consent. One of their kings, having received a grant from them to maintain a war against the Moors, now this is going to sound familiar, desired that if the sum which they had given should not be sufficient, he might be allowed for that emergency only to raise more money without assembling the Cortes. It's always for that one emergency, isn't it? But it never, ever ends there. Now, Dickinson explained that the good guys actually tried to stop this. They fought against this, but unfortunately they lost. And that loss set the stage for almost unlimited power in the future. I guess really unlimited power is how it went down. He said the request was violently opposed by the best and wisest men in the assembly. It was, however, complied with by the votes of a majority. And this single concession was a precedent for other concessions of the like kind, until at last the crown obtained a general power of raising money in cases of necessity. Now, necessity, that is a real broad term that you don't want government to be able to define. So it started out with the king could only raise money. They could only raise money on the subject with the consent of the representatives of the people. Then you had a war, and that war was an emergency. So the king said, this one emergency only, let me get away with breaking the rules, doing an end run around this. And instead of just telling them, no, we have to hold the line, they allowed him that set a precedent to expand that, and went beyond emergency into just the necessity of the tyrant. And of course, they never recovered from that fatal mistake, and freedom was obliterated. Dickinson said, from that period, the Cortes ceased to be useful. The people ceased to be free. Now, the ancients, they knew this game very, very well. Sometimes all a tyrant needs to do is literally just frighten the people. And Thomas Gordon, in the works of Sallust, he told the story of Dionysius. This was the tyrant of Syracuse, who used 150 years after Pisistratus the exact same strategy, but he didn't need to attack himself. He only needed to fearmonger. Here's how Gordon put it. He told them, and his argument was enough to gain their belief. Don't trust these people when they tell you stuff, is the warning there, that he went in hourly peril of his life and begged them to appoint him a guard. They readily granted him what he wanted, and he readily took what they had thus helped him to, even the prerogative of putting chains upon them all. Being well-versed in this history, it's no surprise that James Madison understood that government will always use fear of foreign danger, real or fake, to attack freedom at home. In a 1798 letter to Thomas Jefferson, this is during the run-up to passage of the Alien and Sedition Acts, He said, perhaps it is a universal truth that the loss of liberty at home is to be charged to provisions against danger, real or pretended, from abroad. Now, this is not from your modern day tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. This is James freaking Madison, the father of the Constitution. He was a student of history, and he understood that people who want to expand their power will find a way to do it. They will either exploit a real foreign crisis and get the job done, and if they can't find one, they will literally make one up. Now, it isn't just foreign danger. As John Trenchard pointed out in Cato's Letters number 17, there's also a domestic version of this play: manufacture or provoke a crisis at home and end up with the same result. He said, they will, by all practicable means of oppression, provoke the people to disaffection, and then make that disaffection an argument for new oppression, for not trusting them any further, and for keeping up troops, and in fine, for depriving them of liberties and privileges to which they are entitled by their birth and the laws of their country. Now, this isn't just theory either. Nero, possibly the most infamous tyrant in history, he literally and personally pioneered the tactic. Here from the works of Tacitus, translated by Thomas Gordon. Nero, who disguised in the habit of a slave, went roaming about the streets and scoured the public inns and stews, followed by a set of companions who seized as prey whatever stood exposed to sale and assaulted whomsoever they met. So they went around in disguise, masked men, attacking people, stealing stuff, and getting away with it. And it caused all kinds of crazy violence. And all these violence from Tacitus were committed upon the people so unapprised of the author that he himself was once wounded and bore the scar in his face. And that's when it really got violent, because once people learned that it was Nero, who's going to fight back? I mean, you can't. Even if Nero attacks you, you have no right of self-defense. And so that led to a really crazy situation where there was all kinds of violence and disorder. And it was so severe, it was like the city was under siege. Back to Tacitus, the name of Nero, being once used to warrant licentiousness, was falsely assumed as a cloak by others. And many with their own separate gangs boldly practiced the same excesses, copycats all over the place. So that such were the nightly combustions at Rome, as if the city had been stormed and the inhabitants taken captive. So what does Nero do? Well, he uses this. He provoked the people into violence, and then he uses that violence as an excuse, as a justification to deport people he didn't like and expand military power and rule. Back to Tacitus, these tumults went on till the people being heated and rent into dissensions and commotions still more terrible apprehended. No other remedy. This is the last thing we can do. No other remedy was found but that of driving the players out of Italy and of recalling the soldiers to guard the theater. The lesson is clear to the founding generation. It should be clear to everyone. If it happened over there, if it happened back then, it can happen anywhere. It can happen here, and it can happen now. That's the same warning that the anti-federalist writer Cato, in his 5th essay, that's what he told us in 1787. He said, "Is it because you do not believe that an American can be a tyrant? If this be the case, you rest on a weak basis. Americans are like other men in similar situations." The founding generation, they were students of human nature. They were students of history. Cato continued, "Your posterity will find that great power connected with ambition, luxury, and flattery will as readily produce as Caesar, Caligula, Nero, and Domitian in America as did the same causes in the Roman Empire." Now, if you happen to be thinking about, I need to get myself some new reading, you are in luck, because available for pre-order today is our new book, The Anti-Federalists Were Right. Martin, Mason, Gary, Cato, and the Pennsylvania Dissenters, The Case Against Ratification. You can find that one if you want to hear more about the anti-federalist case over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/anti-federalist. It's all spelled out. 10thamendmentcenter.com/anti-federalist. Now, going back to the works of Tacitus, that brings us to what is possibly the most dangerous kind of Trojan horse, the most dangerous kind of false flag, the ruler who pretends to love liberty, but uses that fake love of liberty to gain power and then destroys liberty once they wield power. And for that, we have the Imperator Caesar Augustus, the adopted son of Julius Caesar. He first pretended to love and support and defend liberty. And here from the works of Tacitus, Augustus paid great court to the people. The very name that covered his usurpation was a compliment to them. He affected to call it the power of the tribuneship, an office first created purely for their protection, and as the strongest effort and barrier of popular liberty. What Augustus did was actually pretty slick. First, he resigned the consulship to make it seem like he was returning power to the people, but he got something in exchange. The Senate gave him the power of the office of the tribune. This was an office that the people understood as a bulwark against tyranny. Now, he wasn't legally authorized to hold the office, so they just gave him the power of it anyways. And then he used that power under the guise of protecting national security to seize total power and control. Here's how Tacitus put it. It was for their sake and security. He pretended to assume this power, though by it he acted as absolutely as if he had called it the dictatorial power. Such energy there is in words. The office itself was erected as a bulwark against tyranny, and by the name of it, tyranny is now supported. The founders and the old revolutionaries, they were very well versed in this history of Augustus. They also were very well aware of their own 17th century Augustus, Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell was really supposed to be where he was sold as the champion of English liberty, but he sold instead a military dictatorship to the people under the guise of protecting the people from the other party. Here's how Thomas Gordon put it in A Discourse on Standing Armies. The partisans of Oliver Cromwell, when he was meditating tyranny over the three nations, gave out that it was the only expedient to balance factions and to keep out Charles Stuart. Hey, you know, these Stuart people are really, really dangerous. You got to let me have this power to keep them away. The other side is awful. But as Gordon pointed out, the fix ended up being way worse than the disease. And so they did worse things to keep him out than he could have done if they had let him in. And this should be the ultimate lesson from all this history. The wolf always comes dressed as a sheep. Benjamin Rush in 1778, this is the height of the American Revolution, the War for Independence. He knew this very clearly. He said, tyranny can now enter our country only in the shape of a Whig. All our jealousy should be of ourselves. All our fears should be of our great men, whether in civil or military authority. And that's the lesson the founders and old revolutionaries knew so well, but Americans today have long, long forgotten. And that's a big part of the reason why we work so hard every single day to reach and teach more and more people with these essential history lessons, these essential foundational principles from the founders, from the old revolutionaries and the great thinkers that they read and learned from. And absolutely nothing helps us do this work more than the financial faith and support of our members. If you
I like that guy. His chat's a little snobby. They kind of keep to themselves. You know, if you haven't been there for a while, they're not really going to pay you any attention. But that's how some chats are. I'm glad we're not like that. That's why I really love you guys, because we don't ignore people. Unless we should ignore them. Right?
Right.
Bonnie, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Really?
Well, and also I saw Eric snuck in here. Nice to see you, Eric. Yorga baby.
Now can you hear me?
I know Sean was making his way up here. I'll bet Bonnie got taken by surprise and that video ended on her.
You still can't hear
I
me?
have a feeling that's what happened, you guys. Oh. Am I not
What?
hearing?
Yeah,
Something
because
happening?
what says they hear me.
I don't hear Sean or you. Oh, there you are. Okay. Oh, you heard Bonnie? I didn't hear Bonnie. Now I hear Bonnie, but I didn't before.
Dee hasn't been feeling well. I think her ears might be clogged up a little.
No, I think my internet is. Wow. It's true. Fighting some bullshit. We're in the fog for like a week. I swear
Doesn't
it's-
a lot of that sound so familiar?
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Sean, good to see you.
What's up, Sean?
Well, I still had the YouTube open, so there was an echo. So I moved to close that app, and it booted me out of Chrome where the StreamYard was open in. So it was like, no, I have to refresh. So that's why I dropped in and out. So
Ah.
not trying to be coy or shy. I just had to make some supper and figured I better wolf that down before we get into tonight's material, of which I have done zero prep. It's your turn,
I
folks, to
have.
educate me on the 14th Amendment.
I did some prep.
Great.
Well,
I want you to teach me this time.
Well, that's quite a
it's
high ask.
No, I think you guys can do it. I
Mm.
don't know everything, and I like to learn, so
What?
I'll get your input.
we
Because
got this.
1 through 13, I have my interest in. You know, I kind of like
Mhm.
my eyes glaze over from 13 or from 14 through the rest, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist or I should ignore them. So I do want to see what else we have on the books, if that makes any
Oh,
sense.
I'm very curious to see what Bonnie's going to pull out of that heady video she just played. I want to know what the main point is for
The
you,
main
darling.
point
Uh-huh. Yeah.
is being attacked from within without even realizing it. Let's see. I think I heard something about deportation and military and causing chaos. A lot of points he was making just sounds like now. It just does. And so this is what the 14th Amendment says, I think. The 14th Amendment established citizenship for all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and guarantees all citizens the equal protection of the laws and due process of law. It also includes other key provisions such as prohibiting states from abridging the privileges of immunities of citizens, disqualifying insurrectionists from holding office, and requiring states to repay war debts incurred by the Confederacy. Okay, but that's back then. The amendment's enforcement power is granted to Congress, which has used it to pass other civil rights legislation.
Oh, indeed. That's the part I'm going to share about.
Okay, go for it, because then I'll go to the act.
No, give me one sec. Give me 1 second. I got to get there. There's a lot of provisions in the 14th Amendment. It's 6 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of, yeah, exactly. There are a lot of different things. Let's see, how many provisions here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 provisions, and they vary in power. But one thing I'll say just to get us kicked off, and this will be enough for Sean, I think. What it says here for the first one, I'll go through. It says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States and also of the state wherein they reside. This provision gives every human being born or naturalized in the United States the right to citizenship in both the United States and the state where the person resides. The only exceptions are children born to foreign diplomats and children born to enemies during wartime occupation. It is interesting that in spite of this amendment, American Indians living on reservations could not be citizens or have their children considered citizens until 1924. This amendment was found to be necessary because, in spite of the 13th Amendment, which was ratified there continued to be a number of abuses of former slaves. In some states, they were forbidden to appear in the towns in any other character than menial servants, and they were required to reside on cultivated land without the right to purchase or own it. They were excluded from many occupations because of their race and were not permitted to give testimony in the courts in cases where a white man was a party. There was also heavy fines imposed on vagrants and loiterers who, if unable to pay the fines, were sold under a work contract to the highest bidder. This was done on the assumption that while the federal government could abolish slavery per se, only the state had authority to regulate the affairs of the individuals. Now, here's the meaty part, and this is what
I
I'll
like
end with this last paragraph here. It was because of the serious abuses of civil rights among some of the states that a number of civil rights bills were launched beginning in 1963, and these rapidly transferred a great deal of jurisdiction from the states to the federal courts. This had been avoided in the past because many felt it would give the federal courts so much power they might become abusive themselves. Furthermore, many authorities expressed particular apprehension because the new laws would give the federal courts enforcement power over individuals as well as public and private institutions. Nevertheless, Congress passed the laws hoping the courts would exercise restraint. That's
anything
the first
federal
one.
exercise restraint.
Uh-huh.
I
It's
want to
funny.
see that happen. So, the purpose of this when it was first written was because of the slaves and segregation, correct?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like for that provision. We couldn't, you can't pin this whole, this whole amendment to any one thing. There's, like I said, there's 12, what I say, there's 12
Yeah.
provisions. So
That's because
each,
the Civil War had so many other reasons for it besides slavery, possibly.
right. Hmm. Allegedly in Minecraft.
Well, okay. How do I do this without not getting us a strike?
Well, it's not had one
I
yet,
was
so don't worry.
I was gonna say I used the name Striker before YouTube was a thing, so my intent is not to get channels removed. So, remember how in most documents that you present in any system, you want to keep them simple and concise and short and to the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said that was 10 provisions or 12 provisions. How many was that again?
12.
It sounds like a big, beautiful bill, or the Affordable Care Act, or the continuing resolution. Which, by the way, I don't know if you followed that, Dee, but the continuing resolution, McConnell put in a cannabis ban to please his liquor donors. So yeah, you and me need to talk on that later because I think we might have to deal with that for Californians in general because we're known as one of the states that us in Colorado. So we have mutual friends in the chat as well who might want to look into that. Anyway, when you have all these provisions, it sounds to me like everybody just threw everything into the box and said, "Hey, let's try to pass everything quickly." Now let's change a element here. They're talking about civil rights.
Yes.
Would I want civil rights or do I want my God-given rights?
Exactly. Bingo.
God-given.
But you make it seem like it's something that is to be obtained and scored and taken, just like a personhood. Suddenly, everybody wants it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can go to the word citizen. I'm curious, Dee, if you're looking at a copy that's like designed or is a scan of it where it's parchment, or if it's just a text.
I'm reading my Making of America book by Dr. Skousen. This is not the Constitution I'm reading. It's the book, the study book.
Okay. I was just gonna be curious as to whether it was a capital C citizen or a lowercase c citizen.
Oh,
That's-
let me see.
In the Constitution, I mean, in the
Yeah,
in
on
the
that
14th Amendment,
Yep.
is the question lowercase.
Yeah, lowercase in the study book too. When speaking of
Interesting.
citizenship, it's lowercase.
Interesting, because I believe it was the Constitution as like the only document where they flipped the rules about capitalization as far as citizen goes. So
Hmm.
that's something I'll have to follow up on. Basically, they turned it from being a common usage. They made it like it's a title. They didn't capitalize it, and then the capital C citizen was supposed to be like the regular people. It's a very interesting thing they did, because if you accept that citizenship under that constitution, you become a constitutor. And D, what is a constitutor?
One who abides by the Constitution or studies it.
But even more, no, that's a constitutionalist. A
Mm.
constitutor is a party to the Constitution, and the Constitution is a debt instrument for the U.S. corporation and the various banks and incarnations we've had going back to the founding.
Mm.
That's the thing, folks. If you want to say, "Hey, I'm under that Constitution. I want my constitutional rights." Oh, cool. That means you have a right to pay that 38 plus trillion debt because you're a party to it. Good job. See how that works? They talk you
Yeah.
into being a party to the debt, as opposed to the debt they ran up themselves that they're a party to, because they swore to it. That's their job, is to pay that debt, manage that corporation. But if you want to help them, sure, volunteer. Say you want to be a U.S. citizen and a party to that Constitution, just versus being a plain old American or a Californian or a Texan or a Floridian. So, yeah,
So just regular people, when they're referring to us as citizens, is uppercase C.
if you're claiming it as a title, yeah. It's supposed to be that way, but in this case, they flipped it. That's where the Constitution screws people over. For some reason, these folks thought they'd be coy, and they flipped that rule around. So it's like, it's like, I believe it's the only Western document that actually does that. I have to double check my source on that. But regardless, even if you're uppercase or lowercase, if you make yourself a party to that contract between we the people and the government, you're now obligated to the terms and conditions of it. So you better be careful when you get pulled over at the middle of the night. You tell that cop you want your constitutional rights. You tell them you want your God-given rights. All rights are reserved. A lot of folks in the chat already know this, but it goes without saying. It's be repeated a few times. There might be someone new listening. So, and Bonnie, just so you know, I did share out that the chat was tonight. In fact, I got to share if you guys don't mind me taking a break, I got to share the link to a certain assembly that I might have a connection to.
Oh, thank you.
Just now getting in here. I've been running late all day. Yeah, I won't share the StreamYard. I'll share the YouTube link. Give me about 5 minutes, because I'm gonna have to bounce into the YouTube to get the link. Okay, be right back.
Okay.
I promise.
Then I won't go into that until you're back.
Okay.
See what Sean's opinion, or it's not opinion, what he gets out of it. Wonder why they did make it so long, the provisions.
Well, they're all different. They're just cramming it in there while they had people that were so agreeable, I imagine.
Yeah.
I thought I just shared you on X. I'm not super big in X. Maybe I shared you on YouTube, which I didn't really want to do.
Oh, wow.
Well, you know how I am. I don't want these humble people finding me here.
Right.
A lot
On
of
this
people,
day, Congress moves to Washington, D.C.
Mm.
Says what like
No way. Really?
hmm
Well, someone used to say FDC.
a lot of people say.
Yeah, a lot of people do say that. But maybe I didn't share you. I thought I did.
Man, have y'all been watching Mexico?
Yeah, it's crazy, huh? Wow. It's getting nuts. Oh, yeah, I
Right.
did. I shared it on, darn it, I shared it on YouTube. That's not where I wanted to share it.
They're showing how it's done,
I don't know. Are they going to win?
huh? I don't know. Uh, I don't know.
I hope so.
I feel bad for. I mean, they've had it, and I can understand.
Okie
Uh,
dokie, I'm back.
Okay, so
Thanks for your patience.
what I was going to ask you about is the 1952 McGarren-Walters Act. Have you heard of that?
No.
I cannot say that I've heard of it. Like I said, this particular amendment, you guys will need to educate myself on because it's. I kind of look at everything again. Pre 13th Amendment pretty much has everything covered. Post 13th Amendment, it's like everything from the de facto is created by the U.S. corporation, and as
Yeah.
it's not that I don't acknowledge that it's on the books. I just don't agree with it being on the books. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. So, this is from U.S. Immigration, 1952, McGarren-Walters Act. It is the law revised and reaffirmed 1965, still active and on the books. I'm sorry, it's kind of blurry because it's old, I guess. Federal law, whereas in Islam and Sharia law, it is not compatible with U.S. law or the U.S. Constitution and calls for its destruction, and therefore it is biased, no, banned from entry into the U.S. Chapter 2, Section 212 is the prohibition of the entry to the U.S. if the alien belongs to an organization seeking to overthrow the government of the United States by force, violence, or other unconstitutional means. Any immigration without assimilation is an invasion by enemy forces. And it sounds like it's still in effect.
Now, if I may, will we have people with backbone to enforce it?
Excuse me.
Right?
Will we have people with backbone to enforce it?
Well, as we can see, no. So that's where the states come in, and that's where the people need to step up and say for each state, isn't it? Or does federal law overcome state law? I thought the state law was majority, but it appears that federal law has taken its place.
Well,
Well,
that's what this
Bonnie,
says.
go ahead,
Go
Dee.
ahead. Okay, just real quick. It said in beginning in 1963, the bills that were launched in lieu of the 14th Amendment rapidly transferred a great deal of jurisdiction from the states to the federal courts. It had been avoided in the past because many felt it would give the federal courts so much power they might become abusive. Hey, Watt, good to see you.
Welcome,
What?
Watt.
I yield.
Evening,
Casey,
y'all. Evening,
good.
everybody.
Good evening.
No
That
state constitution was actually ratified of each state.
yeah, I see that comment as well, which that's something I'm not going to touch that for, I'll call it reasons. But what I will touch is the quote that Dee just talked about the federal government becoming abusive.
Yes.
Yeah, how many times do they misapply the supremacy clause? I'm going to give you guys a good example. We have those Amish folk in Pennsylvania and Michigan and elsewhere. They just want to sell their milk to customers who want to buy their milk. But the federal, drug administration or Food and Drug Administration, whatever they're called today,
Yes.
they come in from, the swamp and they say, we rule over all this country and you can't do the business of selling somebody your milk because we don't like how you make it, that it's straight from the cow like God intended and, chilled on ice, and that's about it. And, so that they've been harassing the Amish for, decades. And
Yes.
as we saw, when that big government gets out of line, what do you know? You guys managed to be so stupid about it. You ticked off the Amish enough that they actually voted in 2024, another first in the history of this country. They actually had to get politically active because even they realized that they may be left alone for a while, but sooner or later the government will take an interest in them. Overlaps to the Native American reservations too. They're realizing that they're a voting bloc. They are being interfered from this, and a lot of times it doesn't care. The government, as a corporation, its job is to grow and interfere and tax and create a profit. So it doesn't care what side of the aisle you're voting on because it's a machine that functions. Unfortunately, it functions out of whack. A corporation should do good to its customers, we the people, and it should grow in a manageable, sensical way versus the nonsense we have where, hey, we're making a profit. Let's send all of our profit to other nations that don't align with us or blow those nations up so that the host, or excuse me, not the host, but the populace of those countries come over here for us to host them while bearing a big chip on their shoulder. It's
Yeah.
it's a very mismanaged corporation, and people had to, for years since I was a kid in the '80s, we need a businessman to run the country. Now we finally got one, and even half the Republican Party won't get behind him, and that's on the policy on the Epstein Island thing. Yeah, I'm a little ticked about that, but they just said today it's all going to be declassified. The Republicans have got to vote on it, this and that. Now watch them. Watch what happens with that. 'Cause it looks like the Democrats aren't interested anymore. But yeah, if we're going to have this particular amendment, will it be abusive? Well, it's got how many provisions? When you have more and more provisions, you have more and more opportunities to abuse it against the people. It should have been cut and dry and simple. And
Yes.
it's wordy, clunky, and a mouthful. I'm going to go ahead and yield.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned the Amish, and I remember it was a few years ago. If anybody's familiar, there was a guy named Amos Miller. He was selling dairy and different products from his farm, stuff that he raised. And one of the things that he was selling allegedly was raw milk. And if anybody's ever had raw milk or real milk, it tastes a lot different than what comes out of Wally World.
Yes.
But allegedly, somebody got sick and tried to say it was his milk. Well, some agencies allegedly overstepped their bounds and said, "Hey, buddy, you can't sell this raw milk." You know what I mean? So he had to fight several battles. He ended up winning one, where basically the verdict was the Pennsylvania version of like the FDA and agriculture couldn't. They overstepped his bounds in trying to regulate his business, something he's been doing for years. Most people are familiar with the Amish and the way that they do things, which is the way I think a lot of people should do things. Maybe not so much all totally living, but just being self-sustainable. You know what I mean? Having what you need. Your community has what you need. But Amos Miller, that was one that kind of got brought into the spotlight a few years ago when they were attacking the Amish in Pennsylvania.
Yes. And
Uh,
I yield.
it used to be that they would deliver raw milk to your home without it going through a plant. But the thing about the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, that's all food that they're saying all has poisons in it now, and pharmaceuticals, which we know what they do.
if I may posit a thought, isn't it funny? We have a Department of Education, we get dumber. We have a Food and Drug Administration, and now we have a drug epidemic, and people are sicker and eating worse food. Seems every time this corporate government touches a topic, it ruins it. And wildlife, I think Amos Miller, was he the guy Robert Barnes was representing? Because I know Barnes was taking up the case for the Amish and the milk.
I think he was involved with it. I'm not sure exactly the players and his legal team, but yeah, some things, him and other people, they're still ongoing things, you know. Definitely.
Well, I'm going to share with you a little secret, folks. My father used to, my family out east used to live on a farm, what have you, da da da. So my father, when he was in California as a kid, he would take me to the Altadena Dairy. Those are a real thing in California. They were like basically like gas stations with where your bottles of milk were at. You could buy bottles of milk of buttermilk, or his case, he'd drink the raw milk straight. And I drink, as a kid, I wasn't quite into the taste of buttermilk or raw milk, but I did like my whole milk, and I would drink like a whole quart of that in like a one drive, to and from, to go do whatever we were doing as a father and son outing. So love me some milk, right out the fridge. Still do to this day. I know people complain that you don't need to drink it when you're an adult, but you know what? You throw some fruit in that, thicken it up with some malt and some protein powder, and you got yourself a smoothie for the gym. So if somebody want to have milk their way, they want it straight out the cow like God intended, I say let them have it. But somehow it seems that there's these big old corporations, and they're like, no, we these people must be violating, something. We got to stick our, fingers in there and violate their. Are they civil rights? Don't know, but they are rights. The cattle are their product. The milk is the product the cattle they own. They bottle it up and sell it as their product. It seems like the government has this problem with violating the rights of people who just want to share their products with others that do or don't harm people. See also the cannabis industry. So, I think this corporation is playing itself out in live time in front of our eyes, and we the people are going to have to, whether you approve of my method or other people's methods of getting us back on track, we're going to have that real discussion of what do we do about this 38 trillion plus debt corporation that some elements insist it's our debt, other elements say, well, we want our piece of the pie because this nation owes us debt, so we get to take your farmland, or we get to take your cities or your housing complexes. If you guys have looked into the Chinese buying up all of our multi-unit housing and our regular family housing, that's a very real thing out here in California, guys. So
Yes.
the conversation has to happen soon, probably right around the time the midterms are going to happen, if not sooner. I yield.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. If people still believe voting works.
But like you said, all those departments, like Department of Education, we're getting dumber, whatever. But, some people would say, man, are these people really that jacked up? Are they really not know how to manage things? Are they that dumb? Or is it just that they're doing exactly what maybe some of those agencies or players intended it to do? I think it was Rockefeller that once said, I don't want a people that can think. I want people that can work. I don't want a thinking nation. I want a working nation. I think that was Rockefeller that said that.
Yeah, the way I look at it, I think it was Carnegie that said competition is a sin, and they want their unicorporation to run everything. And if you happen to be someone creating your own farm or your own business or your own family, that's competition to whatever their goal or their agenda is. And It's not the money that they want. It's literally the power. They want to have enough money to have
Yeah.
that unlimited power,
The money's
kind of
just
like
a tool to
Emperor
get that power.
Palpatine. You know, exactly. That's why it's currency. It's just fuel that flows.
Yeah, up and down like the current of the sea.
Hey, imagine that. And it's not
So
precious species of currency, what have you. Go ahead, Bonnie.
what Casey is saying about a real constitutional government, is there such a thing? Because we can see all the issues that were being had when the Constitution was written. So, I understand that the forefathers saw a lot of what could happen if it got in the wrong hands, which obviously it did. But we're for solutions and remedies. Y'all were just talking about the currency, and the only way I see two paths. You either fall for the digital world and work in that, or you figure out another way to buy, sell, trade goods in our natural born way.
If I may, Bonnie, I think Dee has heard me talk about this before. Maybe you guys have heard me. So maybe I'm going to repeat myself. And I know that may be boring, but
No.
you guys know I'm involved in the security field. And I was down at Pechanga Casino on the New Year's Eve going into 2020. Couldn't help but notice all the Chinese people that were there, happy, partying, none of them wearing their COVID masks. You know, it's the New Year's ball drop inside Pechanga. It's, video screen and little, dance hall setup and all that. And, packed to the gills, though, for them. But I noticed, over by the escalators that go up to the hotel wing of the casino, you have these little Chinese kids and they're kicking something I thought was R2D2 or a trash can. Turns out it was a surveillance drone / robot that literally rolls around on wheels and had cameras like on 4 sides. I thought that was funny because in China, these kids couldn't kick that thing around. They'd be arrested for it. But here in the States, they're able to vent their frustration on that thing. And of course, it's hardy enough that, kids that aren't even 8 years old aren't going to really hurt it. But I observed the thing and it rolled from the escalator towards casino floor and then, back towards the escalators. I guess it's to make sure people are going to the booth and showing their IDs when they go up to their hotel rooms or whatever. But being in security, you have that human that human intel or human. You have that instinct, that gut feeling, something that these robots are never going to have. We have all the surveillance in Washington, D.C., New York, the Pentagon, whatever. Still failed to prevent the 9/11 attacks and other attacks since then. Still failed to protect Charlie Kirk. I mean, you can argue all these robots and drones and everything are going to protect the people, but they're not. So in this future they're trying to build of AI and grids and surveillance, it's still going to come down to the people. They may if you ever watch RoboCop, they may build a Ed 209, a big old hulking law enforcement machine. But the thing that made RoboCop stand out is he still had a human brain and memories and a soul, even though he was, basically encased in a shell.
Like RoboCop.
The human element is always going to be there. If you watch the anime series Ghost in the Shell, they discussed that as well. We, the people, cannot let them convince us that we don't have free will and that we need to be body augmented or jacked in or chipped or whatever and give up that free will. Don't let them mess with your brain base. In the case of the RoboCop franchise, RoboCop had his memories come back kind of like a glitch, and that's why he was able to remember the bad guys that killed him and go off on his spree to arrest them. They are hoping when we are plugged in that we won't have our memories. We'll be mind swiped and just, do our work at the keyboard or at the factory wheel or whatever, and we'll just be these mindless automations and drones while they are free to do what they will. And that the machine man is I think the term for it.
Yeah.
They steal our loosh. It's called loosh.
Yeah, it's like your life force or your energy, right, Dee?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Keep
Yeah.
your
So we can't give that up.
Well, it feels like that's how we're being corralled is onto these computers and onto these devices. Because I've, as much as I've tried to fight them and fight them and fight them, there was a time where you either get on board or you're left out. You're not, there's a lot of people in Humboldt County, they're not on board. They don't have internet. These people are just living country lives out here, tons of them, like probably the heartland of America. But I don't know. I wonder what percentage of people do not have internet, you know? Really don't know.
I don't
Well,
think it's a whole lot because even Starlink is gaining popularity with people who live out in the
But there's
country.
still a certain type of people that doesn't want to be on computers. I know
Yes,
it's more rare, but even I myself have been forced into it with the movement because when I went to go take up a job, I mean, I could have did a job as an HR person anywhere or did a computer job doing almost anything, but I'd rather labor and cook. I'd rather do a lot of things than sit on a computer, but
yes.
then we heard, oh, we needed digital soldiers. We need to, we need to be the new news. And so it's
Well,
more digital than printing press, really, it's more fluid on all these social media
yes.
apps, right? Yeah.
There's some good from it. I mean, here we are being able to have these discussions and try to learn things. And that's the last 6 years. I have learned so much from everybody here has contributed something. So I don't think that it's bad unless it's being used to be bad, to surveil us, to use whatever we're saying or typing into it to use against us in some way.
Well,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
if we're all, oh, did you want to say something, Mark? Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna make a joke, but go ahead.
Make a joke because I haven't even
No, I was
formed
gonna
my
say, yeah, I know what
thoughts.
you mean about using their likeness because they used my likeness one time. You know how when you go to the store and you get the picture frames and it's already got the people pictures on it? They used a
Yeah.
picture of me. That was
What?
me.
That was
Yeah,
you?
me. I yield.
Oh gosh.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Mama
No.
T, good to
What?
see you. Mama
Mama
T,
T. I sent
hey,
you a
girl.
link yesterday. I wonder if she knew that.
Mama T.
Um, I want to just say about the internet and the phone devices thing. We see the children, we see the internet the meltdowns when they take their iPad or phone away. We see all that. It's not good fruit. And what I see is my own life being corralled into the computer thing. Like I said, anything that's corralling me, like recently someone asked my husband, oh, why don't you guys does Dee own half the business? Yeah, why don't you have her own 51%? Okay, then you be 49 and then you could be women owned and then you can have all these tax write-offs and this and that. Well, okay, if money is the most important thing to somebody, I mean, maybe it just sounds like ego to other people why you wouldn't want 50-50, but there's a reason why they corral us. Lastly, cemeteries. Everyone thinks being cremated is necessary, because not everyone, that's a dumb thing to say. I don't mean that. I take that back. A lot of people think that we're running out of room. Our friends that were here 2 weeks ago literally said that. They're not going to get buried. They're fifth generation Humboldt. His mother literally owned property across from the cemetery. I really don't care if people get buried or cremated. What I don't like is being corralled and being coerced and being forced to, well, this is what's best because we all think so, is what it feels like. Anyway, but I yield.
may I?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, D, if you get to see those neighbors, those fifth generation Humboldt people, politely remind them that all the people on the planet could be squeezed into one county in Texas and there'd still be room left over. So there's plenty of room for people to be buried, just maybe not in a specific cemetery, but everyone can have their plot of dirt or their little house with their yard and their fence and their few acres. It's just a matter of make sure you're responsible about it and you don't, put toxic waste in your backyard. Not that the FDA would regulate something like that, Don't get me started. Remember, guys, I worked at an EPA Superfund site a couple years ago. The dirt me and Ricky can tell you guys about those Superfund sites. Oof. Anyway,
Yes.
Yeah.
And you do have the choice to make a family plot on your property. But I think that the decisions that people are making about that I've seen personally are the cost. It is
Yeah, because
such
that's
a
the
huge
coercion part.
cost.
That's what I'm saying. That's the
Yes,
coercion part. Is it really that much more to put someone in a pine box and bury him in the ground than to put him through a cremation thing? Can't
it
imagine it
is.
really
It
is.
is
Oh,
now.
because they make it that way. They make it that cost.
Yes.
But I mean, you still got to pay the cremation service. I don't know. I feel like it's still coercion. Because it's cheaper. That's why we're coerced, along with the mental guilt of, oh, the planet and burying bodies
if
is
I,
bad.
if I may, I'm not sure which traditions, but I know there are some Christian traditions in which they, even though there is the ashes to ashes and dust to dust line, some traditions do not want the bodies to be burned. I believe the ancient Jews were like that too. You had to put the bodies in the ossuaries, let the bone rot off, or you would bury them under the linen. Then you would put the bones of the ossuary and then put them in the family crypt or mausoleum. Hence, where they have that one hill or area near Jerusalem where all the prophets are buried. So
Mhm.
I think there's some connection there that maybe these people want to push the cremation because they think it's some way of like not the fires of Moloch for children, but maybe a version of that for adults. I would have to do a deep dive on that one, which with all the stuff on our list, I don't have the time for the moment on that one. But I have noticed there is a big cremation push. I get a lot of ads and emails, and it's like, that's kind of weird,
Yeah. It's
So,
I have dug into it some. There were some tribes that would put them up on a, a height thing and set them on fire. There's some cultures that would put them in a boat and shoot an arrow and set it on fire.
That's what I want y'all to do for me.
So,
Viking
Okay,
funeral, huh?
we'll let your family know, bro.
but
We'll let them all know.
so throughout the years, I think people have been making that choice themselves. It's, you look at even the Egyptians, they didn't bury them, they put them in a vault. There's places in Louisiana, places that are below sea level, that they put them in some kind of a vault
Mausoleum.
thing because, yes, because of the water flooding up. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I've known people who have been in car wrecks that were burned up. Does that mean that they're bad or not gonna make it to
No,
heaven?
I think you've
I
strayed
don't.
from my original point quite a bit. That is not what I'm
No, no,
saying at
no.
all.
I'm just saying it's. I think it's each person's individual choice as to what they do. I don't
That's
even know how
fine.
we.
I'm just saying there's coercion involved. That's all. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that that's all. But we have strayed from the 14th Amendment, and that might be my fault. I'm sorry.
Well, and it
Well,
all goes back to the money thing, though, is they will use coercion to make the cost so extreme on many things. Look at the cost of our food right now.
Good one, Sean. That's some deadly weed. That's funny.
yeah,
Sorry, they're
420 was
making cannabis jokes. Killer buds, because 420 wants us to grow weed on his cemetery spot.
that's the thing. If someone's going to blaze that and be like, man, this reminds me of our friend 420, and they're going to be like, yeah, it kind of tastes like him too. You know
No, Sean, yuck.
what? Yeah, it's like the joke. The two cannibals are eating a clown. One cannibal looks at the other and asks, "Does this taste funny?"
Oh my gosh.
Too
Yeah,
Too soon with the
think I'm going
state
to
of the
get
world.
cryogenically frozen.
I think I'm gonna throw up.
Like Walt Disney.
Yeah, I think I'm with Leia. Hmm.
Nope. I'm just gonna go out on a boat, and when it's time, I'll know when it's time. And
My mom
Well,
wants to be buried on my property, and it seems like it's going to be illegal. And I would do it. We've buried a horse on this property, a few dogs, cats. Um,
I wonder
but
why they
you
would say
know,
it would be illegal if it's your family, your property.
I mean, I think you have to
I
make
just
arrangements ahead of time. And
Yeah.
I would look into that in your state, Dee, because here it's legal, and as
well, and
long
Devil Dog was telling me you can get a tax write off too. And I saw a lot of people saying that, oh, just bury someone on your land and you can get a tax write off. And then I saw it's really just for the portion where the person's buried. You may not
yes,
get your
it's just for
whole,
that plot.
yeah, which that's not why I would want to do it. That's where my mom truly wants to be buried, is here. And I
Yes,
don't know that I'll get to do that for her. I really don't. She doesn't care if she's cremated. Like, she doesn't care. It's funny when people care so much when they're going to be dead, but
right, and that's
we have that right. We do have that prerogative to decide,
yes,
there
and we sure hope
there's
people
some
will honor it when we're dead.
there's something
Mm.
similar, Dee, to what your mom's wanting though. Is also people used to be buried in the church yard or under the church or under the altars in some of these churches in Europe. You would find different saints and different
Yeah.
congregation members. Their bones would actually be under the floorboards of the churches. It's the idea you were sleeping with the saints and close to Christ because you're near the altar where the communion was consecrated and so on. We as a people, guess what? We're outsourcing it away from the church, away from again that central hub of our community, to these businesses that essentially, I don't want to say they're like a chop shop for cars, but um, I get that impression sometimes they are like that,
Well, yeah, and
especially when you
especially,
add in the medical
mhm,
examiners, when they do
sorry.
the organ harvesting on our California DMV IDs, which reminds me, if you haven't checked, George, you got to remove that check mark
Oh,
or they
honey, don't
will
worry.
organ
I
harvest you. Yep.
didn't. I didn't renew it for sure.
Yep. Yep.
It's
So,
crazy.
Yeah, if you're
yeah.
going to donate to science, you might, people might be mortified to see what the shit they do with those bodies sometimes.
Well, not just that, they will not resuscitate you if they know they can sell your organs and make a
Right?
profit on that. Alex Jones's dad tipped him off to that, and he did a big expose on that a few years ago.
Damn, that's
The island.
crazy.
So,
I've seen a lot of videos about organ harvesting that are very creepy, very, very creepy.
yeah,
And the
think
whole
of
thing about
Repo, the genetic opera. If you've
the
Yeah.
seen
whole
it, you
thing
know what I
about
mean.
Yeah. Oh,
not
yeah.
having burials and tombstones. I mean, look at the last few, decades where cremations really upticked. How many headstones and, memorials and things, like, people are just vanishing. We are dust, and dust we return, but it's just, I don't know, biblically people get buried too. I don't think it matters. I really don't think it matters, but I just don't like the psyche of the nation with it. We're such a death culture, and it's such a, I don't know. I don't even like it for pets. Like, I did not like that my husband didn't want to bring our little dog home and bury it. He wanted them to go ahead and cremate the little tiny dog that we could have buried up here. That's just how I feel.
If I
Uh,
may,
yeah.
the thing of the burial is that because you have the headstone or the marker, you can
Hmm.
track a family's claim to the land and a family's
Hmm.
history where you have the
There you
plaques with
go.
all the names of
Bingo.
family members. It's history. It's
Yep.
Marvel. Marvel is gorgeous for artwork. I was one of those gothy kids that was a fan of all the mausoleum photos and taking the tracing paper and taking charcoal pencils and
Oh, yeah.
etching
yeah,
the gravestone inscriptions off, or going to the veteran cemetery and reading the lifespan of each of the people who die in different wars. I mean, out here in Riverside, we have a national cemetery right over by March Air Force Base. So we you know,
It's
have a lot
interesting
of
to see that the
yeah, we
ages of
have a
some of
lot of
those
that
people.
stuff. By Mount Rubidoux, we have an old, like, cemetery that looks like one of those haunted cemeteries with broken down wooden fences, and we have headstones going back to the late 1800s and stuff. That Wild West era. So there's a lot to be said for history. Well, if you don't have monuments for history, you can pave that all over and turn it into a strip mall or sell it off or whatever. And that was one of the things is like when we came up on the Native American tribal lands and settled them, they would claim their ancestors are buried. Well, you never knew for certain because they didn't leave markers. They would just, go through that valley and say, "Oh, yes, our ancestors are buried here." It wasn't until you found an actual site. Now, get this: when you find that site, say you're doing construction for a road or something, you have to stop the construction, find those remains, contact the tribe, make sure that you have their permission to exhume them or remove them or rebury them or whatever. And that, of course, messes with your product or your project. Now, if you do that, say, to the regular American people, because some of these cemeteries are close to freeways and stuff, you can kind of see what they're planning by kind of phasing cemeteries out. Because another thing cemeteries have, and it feeds in that climate change hoax, is they have trees and lots of nice green grass and plants, like bouquets and things. They're actually, again, for an aesthetic, they're very nice. The socialist globalists of the world don't want us to have anything nice, so
Nothing
something
nice. Nothing.
something that can hold some vases. You can come and visit every couple of weeks and water them. Remember, like in A Christmas Carol, the worst thing for Ebenezer Scrooge was that besides that he's obviously the dead guy at the end and Tiny Tim is dead, as part of it is the revelation that it's his headstone, that it's neglected and covered in webs and leaves and no one's
Right.
visiting, whereas
That's
Tiny
right.
Tim's tomb is visited by Bob Cratchit. So
Yeah,
see, Cratchit, they love Tiny Tim and he gets visitors, whereas Scrooge was not loved. His tomb is neglected, his gravestone's neglected, and heck, he's even mocked in his death by the people taking his belongings and the other bankers having the banquet, the lunch in his behalf. There's a lot of lessons that Charles Dickens put into that whole little novella, which, by the way, it's coming up to Christmas next month. So hey, I'm already kind of thinking forward about that. Point being, the cemetery is a very Western thing, and it's another thing of our culture that is under attack. And not to be morbid, but it's there's a term, American Gothic. I kind of think America, actually, we did cemeteries bigger and better than a lot of the other cemeteries around the world, give or take the pyramids with the pharaohs or the
yeah.
ancient Egyptians. Them they went all out with the gold and everything. I'm like, okay, so somebody's trying to show off.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
and
you
the tombs of the kings. Hmm.
yeah, you mummified your cats in gold. I think you're trying to tell me something.
Pretty. Pro-
You think these
Interesting.
rappers got bling. These rappers got bling. Meanwhile, King Tut's got a freaking whole, mock hairstyle made out of gold, with his little cobra and eagle, on his forehead made of gold. And it's like, yeah, I think this guy might have some wealth. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't, where my daughter is, we're not allowed to take real flowers, which I do. And we're not allowed to plant anything, which I will.
That's outrageous. So outrageous to me.
It is to
Wow.
me too, because yeah, it is to me too. But there'll be something there. And what was I gonna say besides that? What y'all were talking about?
King Tut. King Tut, baby.
No, it wasn't that.
You guys
The
know that, they
cemeteries
said
are
King
under
Tut had a
attack.
broken.
Western country. There
I was
is a history in cemeteries. That's what I was going to say. Sorry, I yield.
Yeah, I was gonna just do some, useless trivia. You know how King Tut, had like that broken leg they found on his mummy and all that. So I
Mhm.
realized that means he could, yeah, make him really hard to walk like an Egyptian, or maybe that's why their legs are fixed in those pictures. I don't know.
Brother, here he goes again. These guys are
It's
corny jokers tonight.
That's why
yeah,
when
the
they
occasional.
they can hardly walk. They're walking real stiff.
Yeah, he had a cast on at the time, but y- the there was comments earlier, from both Jason Schmidt and KC, and part of the thing, this modern technology, we're reading the 14th Amendment. What was that, about a
Yeah,
hundred something years ago? That came out more than 100 years ago. Let's see, we're in
yeah.
2025, 1925, 1870 something, maybe, 1860 something. Yeah, we're going back
Yeah.
in the past there. Uh, Schmidt had asked, about dates when it all went wrong. There's different dates, but when they basically Congress went sine die, we had the Civil War, so that's the big date there because it set the stage for the U.S. to be converted into a corporation, and that's where that Organic Act 1871 comes from. So once they corporatized to turn our country into a corporatocracy, which can be manipulated either by socialists or by fascists, take your pick. That was kind of the big point there as far as when it went sideways for us. For other countries, it was different time periods. The French had their revolution, and they had Napoleon. Then Napoleon was defeated, and then they've been just kind of a mess ever since. But
Man,
the key thing is, it's not so much the dates, because I'm going to go with what Casey was talking about. It's the people being involved. Casey was referencing, the military is doing this. It's all for show. Uh, don't tell Charlie Kirk it's all for show. Okay, the dude's dead. Unless you think that was a big old fake shooting and everything. If it is, great. Maybe he's in Valhalla. But the flip side of it is there's a man dead. There's a widow with kids, and the fact is there were people who either stood down and didn't do their job as security guards, or they were in on it. One of the two. They either effed up, because there's a text that's been released. I gotta track it down again. It was between Charlie and the security detail there, where he was asking them to watch the roofs, and the guy said, "I got you covered." And it was where they were planning the event. There's more people than Candace Owens investigating the Charlie Kirk shooting, folks. So you got to have a lot of feeds out there, and if you're looking into that rabbit hole and that drama right now, you got to educate yourself. You got to be involved, and you got to weigh the evidence. And the thing for us as people, we can be passive onlookers. I know there's a lot of people that's all they want to do. They just want to be in the peanut gallery. But being passive and being that person in the peanut gallery, you're not really doing anything. If you're doing something, even if you're reposting Bonnie's thread link tonight, to share the show, or inviting other people to watch 10th Amendment Center, or the folks who go to national-assembly.net or restore-america.org. As long as you're doing something to get more knowledge out there to the people, that's a start. And all this knowledge online, this is the problem about this AI world they're building. A couple of solar flares or a couple of EMTs, not everything's going to be in a Faraday cage, including Bitcoin and those crypto wallets. They will be FUBAR, which means the people
yes.
need hard knowledge in the real world, actual books, documents. And the thing is, you can say, I want this and that, and everyone can do that on the internet. The sheriff don't care what's on the internet. Your mayor don't care what's on the internet. He has to see that there's a living, breathing man or woman looking at him in the eye and putting it in writing and saying, this is what I want. And you get that document in their hand saying, here's our list. This is what we expect. We're holding you to contract, to your oath. If you're doing it on the internet, 9 times out of 10, they consider those petitions to be spam. You actually get that document into their hands at their little Capitol building. I'm sure some of you have heard the term notice to agent is notice to principal. That means the secretary can't toss it out, folks, because she gets busted too. So, if you know what you're doing, you can actually get these officials to listen. Now, will they try to slow roll your requests? Of course they will. A lot of them will try to run out the clock. That's kind of what we're seeing happen with Trump here, guys. We're seeing that the Patriots were all mobilized there was a lot of action in 2016 through 2019, and then COVID disrupted all of that, and now people are afraid to get together and do anything again because they made gathering in public such a big, offense or suspicious or a big deal. Y'all let them atomize you, and you didn't realize that all you got to do is say no. Biggest power we have, folks, is saying no. Don't do what they want. Do what the people want, and you are all one of the people. I know it sounds weird to say, but what does your household want? What does your neighbor's household want? What do the people across the street want? Do you guys want to be left alone at night? Go tell your public officials, leave us alone at night. You don't need to send cars cruising through here, patrolling with their red and blue lights flickering at all hours of the night. And I'm referencing that because I live across the street currently from a fire department. But
Oh,
yeah, that's interesting when they got to go on calls. Let me tell you. But flip side,
Well,
maybe you're
Sean,
happy
if
with your
I
public
may,
officials.
people
Let them
are,
know when you're
it's
happy with them
beyond
too.
that. Oh, sorry. I was kind of cutting out. Okay.
Yeah, I was addressing to also let them know when you're pleased with their service, because if you don't, reward good behavior and you only show up when there's, hard times, that's like a fair weather patriot. You got to be there as a winter soldier. So when your sheriff needs a posse to go look for that missing kid, you guys have got to step up. It's not just when it's your kid. You got to, we are our brother's keepers, folks. Not to be like a communist or a socialist, but there is accountability amongst the body of Christ for each other. That's the original charity, was the church members taking care of the church members, not paying off some government across the country to manage our money and then give us a percentage of our money back. That's why that's not charity. When Christ is talking about the widow's mite, she's taking her own money and giving it to the temple. She's not, giving it to Rome to then relocate to the temple. Sorry, I was in rant mode there for a second. Dee, what'd you say?
Dee, did you?
I don't mean to be rude. My brain blanked. Seriously.
No, I couldn't get to my mute button. I don't
Okay.
know.
So I kind of think, this is just my opinion, that since we found out there were presidents before Washington, that when Washington came in, might have been when it became a corporation. Maybe.
Well, let's
Possibly.
just say, Bonnie, it was the start of the Great American Experiment. I mean, if you guys notice, Washington's personal coat of arms, his colors are all over the flag for DC, and they actually do have a statue of him in London. So, that's kind of, weird that they would acknowledge George Washington over there in London.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you also, in terms of symbolism, well, I may as well bust it out. If you guys didn't watch Alex Jones today, he explained something, and this he didn't want to do it, but he's calling out Bibi Netanyahu and the people with Bibi. And I'm sorry if this offends any baby boomers. Bibi basically has been saying that his people are going to be going to war against the new Rome. Well, they consider America to be the new Rome, and part of that, for those who know about the Mystery Babylon or Mystery Rome and know about the founding of this country, there's a lot of elements where they were trying to mimic the Greek and Roman republics, including the fasci that are in the Senate building and so on, or the fasci that are under Lincoln's hands on the Lincoln Memorial. The chair he sits in, literally his hands are over fasces, if you know what you're looking at. Now, I say this about Washington. The issue in our country is because we are a country where you could have Jew and Christian and Protestant and Catholic and Mennonite and even, well, in theory, you could have Muslim, but we'll go back to that excerpt later. But the point is, you could have all these different faiths living and working together. Well, when Washington was on his deathbed, and was passing away from supposed blood poisoning and the leeches and all that, or what I suspect might have been assassination, there was a Jesuit priest who actually baptized Washington into the Catholic Church on his deathbed. I don't know how coherent Washington was, but I always said to myself, why would Rome want to have one of their agents baptize Washington on his deathbed, knowing that he did go to church when he was younger and so on, I realized it was a symbolic way of saying we're in control of you. That your first president or king, your top guy is under us. And that's not necessarily true for the whole nation, but Rome's been trying to make us the new Rome. Maryland was a Catholic colony among other spots on the East Coast. So if BB's crowd sees that, whether you're a Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Calvary Christian, Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever, if BB's people see America as the new Rome and they got to punish Rome because of the destruction of the Second Temple, that would explain why they're trying to screw with us. And part of it is they some of their rabbis over there think it'll be funny when the communists come and wipe us out, and they think that the communist Chinese aren't accountable for any of that history, so there's no problem with them doing it. That's why you've seen basically this is why you've seen the communists go. That started with that element. First they wrecked Russia, then they wrecked Europe, then now they're wrecking America, and their tools in China are getting along with them perfectly fine. So we have this constitution, we have this amendment, but we also are on a timetable, if you will. They're trying to give us that fourth turning, that collapse of our nation. They want to dub it late stage capitalism because that's the language of the communists. We've never had pure capitalism because the government was always interfering in it. So when we have real late stage capitalism, I'm sure myself, Ron Paul, Peter Schiff, and other economists will tell you all. But we haven't had pure capitalism in this country except for a very brief period at the founding of the republic. Then the Constitution kicked in, and that kind of went sideways. So if we want to get this country running the way it should, everyone's going to have to do their part. The military cannot operate without civilian authority directing it. So they're trusting the plan. The military is going to do it on autopilot. They're not going to do it on autopilot. When they were on autopilot, if you want to believe that, we saw Miley and General Austin, sticking the fork in every American, or the knife in every American's back that they could. General Milley and all those clowns. That's what happens when you trust the military on autopilot. Oh, trust the plan. Nah, if your people are taken out of those positions to have the plan, you can't implement the plan because you're no longer in those levers. So sorry if it's a rant mode, but I figure it does overlap with the 14th Amendment because everyone's so concerned about their rights, but they forget about their obligations because rights and obligations go hand in hand. I yield.
Yeah, it all ties together. Well, if it's not a true capitalism, what would be the term for that?
Corporatocracy. That term's been used before. They corporatized. See, there's a toxic version of capitalism. You use the communist element as your low-level grunts on the ground. Like Barack Obama talked about it. They even call it third-wave capitalism or third-wave socialism, where you have the communist revolutionaries who are on the ground, but then like Donna Brazil, she's telling Seth Rich and others, did I say too much here? But yes, you do have to actually make a profit off what you're doing and, make your living and make your money off of it and be comfortable. Basically, you become the manager of the communists, and that's where you become a capitalist. That's how people in China operate. You have billionaires in China, ladies and gentlemen. You have actual, people who spend their money like they do in the West, but they're on top of the Communist Party in China. And every now and then, if they want to take their money from them, they just accuse them of corruption and they get disappeared. But the regular Chinese person, they're a peasant, like many of us. They envision us one day being. So we look at the corporatocracy issue. By turning everything into a corporation, you can say, oh, that's capitalism. Some things aren't meant to be a commodity, such as your children, right, your body, the autonomy of your body, your religious service you go to, etc. But they were insistent to corporatize everything and make everything a product. And then what do you do in a communist revolution? You seize the means of production of that product. You mean like the parents and their children? You seize the rights of you seize the children for the parents. You seize the churches from the ministers. You seize the the artistic endeavors from the small businessman who maybe he's just starting out his own book club, or he's starting out his own painting office or painting business, what have you. By turning everything into a corporation, you can then run it without the interference of godly people. Just like we talk about with the AI, you mechanize it. So Yeah, Al Bundy's asking about the VP's real name. That's a good question there too. When people start flipping their names around, it makes me wonder as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the term corporatocracy, oligarchy, you always have that when you have wealthy elites that are running things, but they run it through a system of a corporatocracy. Or a modern system with the AI would be a technocracy, which if you guys want to know how long people have seen this coming, literally in the 90s, we're going to go old school here. There was a White Wolf Publishing. They had a set of role-playing games, one of which was Mage the Ascension. Kind of sounds like the Matrix in a way. And the villains in that game were the technocracy, who had their men in black as their operatives.
Yeah.
So this was, a role-playing game company, White Wolf Publications, out of Stone Mountain, Georgia. The same town the KKK was formed in. You think some people might have some Masonic knowledge in that town that got involved with that studio back in the day? I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
May I?
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Look at what Jerry's
There's
saying too.
11 more provisions of the 14th Amendment. If we want to hear any of them, let me know. I yield.
Yeah, let's go into the next one if we haven't worn out that first one.
Oh, I think we wore it out pretty good. Okay, provision 253 on the 14th Amendment. No state shall pass any law which abridges the privileges or immunities belonging to all citizens of the United States. This provision guaranteed every American the right to enjoy all of the privileges and prerogatives of all other citizens of the United States. It will be observed that this merely repeats what the Constitution had already stated in Article 4, Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. But then they make this whole list of examples of privileges and immunities on the federal level. And that's just there's 15 things on that list, but it's a lot. It all looks like stuff from the First Amendment: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, freedom of association, right? Habeas corpus. So there's all that.
As
And
long as
then I think this provision here is one you may really want to discuss as well, Bonnie. This next one, so we'll knock out, this will be the third one. No state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This provision guarantees the right of every person, not just citizens living in the United States and her territories, to the protection of life, liberty, and property, none of which can be taken away without due process of law. Once again, this provision is simply a repetition of what was already guaranteed in the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process means a full hearing as provided by law. Due process does not necessarily require a jury unless that is the established process for the type of problem involved, nor is a formal trial necessary for due process. If there is a full and fair hearing and an opportunity for the determination of the merits of the case. I yield.
May I?
Yes.
Thanks, Dee or Bonnie. Yeah, something right there for due process as far as being merited to a case. Okay, a mom catches her little kid, just sneaking cookies out of the cookie jar. There's some interrogation back and forth, and he's got crumbs on his face, cookie in his hand behind his back, and she's going to give him a paddling. And some would say, well, this and that. Here's the thing: that's within a household. That's the due process within that household. The simple fact is, though, out in the yard, okay, your neighbor's bull breaks the fence, doesn't hurt anyone, but it could be dangerous. How do you resolve that? Well, maybe your neighbor was drinking and he wasn't paying attention to his farm animals. Maybe it's a bigger deal than just his bull breaking the fence. You can talk to him at the fence. That's the old excerpt from Matthew, and that's the old common law. But if it's been a recurring problem or a problem to the community, yeah, you might have to bring it up to people within your community, which is why you would want to have an assembly present to actually weigh in on such an issue if it needed to go that far. But again, if the American people don't even know who their neighbors are, then how can they all come together to say, hey, you're causing trouble for the community and we need to either step in here and rebuke you, or we need to go to the sheriff and the sheriff will take care of it. So that's kind of a thought right there. The Fifth Amendment, it's like I said, the first 13 amendments cover so much that this 14th Amendment was kind of like, just adding to me more to the Bill of Rights than what was needed already. And the emphasis, on that word person again. Person was a construct the bar attorneys at the founding of the Republic through these different eras kept trying to make personhood be valuable. And it's a good note for those who do follow how this nation was founded. Anybody who was a bar attorney that was there from the Declaration of Independence onwards, it seems they were the ones who didn't get their homes burned or their property taken while the Republic was being built in the early days. Kind of funny how that works out. So that's the miracle of our nation, is that even with people stabbing us in the back, we still had something come out of it in terms of a declaration, Articles of Confederation, and a constitution that was somewhat functional until people sought to break the country back up. Quick note too, folks. Benedict Arnold wasn't the only traitor to the Republic. In those early days, there were more spies and characters than just him, and that back and forth betrayal. Someone like a Lincoln, as much as he was in stuff for himself, he started getting smart and realizing, I'm trying to hold this republic together because he wants to be the top dog over here. But then he realizes, wow, this is getting messy. Maybe I can fix it with, changing the currency. At that point, it's too late. They remove him. And then in the years after that, we see this 14th Amendment get, dropped in. And I'm looking at that like, if you're repeating something in later legislation that's already covered in earlier legislation, to me, that's kind of like a red herring. It's a not a fugazi. It's being done to allow the lawyers to screw with things. And you'll notice after the 14th Amendment, you didn't really hear a lot about civil rights cases in terms of history books before the 14th Amendment. But afterwards, it seemed everybody became a civil rights lawyer and started chasing ambulances and so on. Throw in I'm not sure if the Amistad case was before or after that, but it's around that time period too. Might even be earlier. That was John Quincy Adams, if I recall. So it was earlier. But the 14th Amendment, you can literally see the bar attorney saying, how can we draft something to gum up the works even further? And
well, even the big gap between, what was it, Plessy versus Ferguson versus almost 100 years later, what was it, Brown versus Board of Education? It's almost a 100-year gap in between those two.
Yeah, that's a perfect example right there. And then Brown versus Board of Education, to me, that started all that, separation of church and state hooey that they, now people are going back and we're examining it and they're saying we're revisionists. It's like, no, we're opening up the books from those time periods. And this is what these books said. So us looking at the 14th Amendment, we need to look at not just the amendment itself, but who were the authors, who proposed it to the floor of Congress, who were the people who got the consensus together to push it during the Reconstruction era.
Well, not now. We have 9 more to go.
I know.
So I'm thinking maybe just doing the headlines of them and not reading, like, unless someone wants me to bear down more into the paragraphs. The original provision is only about a sentence or 2 long at most. So I could just read them all and finish it up. And then if we want to bear down into any of the, more depth about it, I could do that. But we might as well read. I got the book open. I got it here,
Was the first one about protection of states? Sorry.
The first one was about all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof and are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States and also of the state wherein they reside.
Now, I love this one. You guys want to hear my take on this?
Yeah.
So if you are subject to that jurisdiction of the United States, right? Whether you're born here or you're naturalized here, wouldn't that in theory mean that whoever is running that body could say, well, you know what? We don't like you, so go away. Bye bye. We're going to deport you because you're subject to me. And I'm the shot caller. I'm the CEO of the corporation. I'm the president of the corporation. You guys get what I'm saying? That maybe right there in that draft, in that sentence, it says that, yeah, he can tell people bye bye, go home to mommy. Except in this case, by mommy, he means anywhere south of Texas.
Mhm.
They want to cite it. Oh, well, we were born here, but you're subject to. Say it again for me, D. You're subject to.
Jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. And who would have jurisdiction as the head authority of the guy who makes the decisions, both for the military and the corporation? Huh. So you see, when the Dems are arguing about this stuff, it's like you guys are shooting yourself in the foot by citing this amendment because the wording is plain and it's right there. No matter how many attorneys foobar this amendment, at the same time, the amendment, it's like a boomerang. It comes right back around on them. Only a person with no ability to read words and definitions would ignore that. And here's the key part. They're hoping to play on people's emotions, so they do ignore what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are because they want to declare it a dead document that's useless. Or you do the Barack Obama move, it's a living document and it can be reinterpreted however you want. So they use both arguments. It's really terrible to watch.
Well,
Anyway,
there's
I
more
yield. Go ahead.
about jurisdiction. Yeah, sure. There's more about jurisdiction in a few more of these. So I think I've read 3, 1, 2, 3 provisions. Is that right? I'm just gonna finish them all out, okay? Like I said, and if you want us to stop, we can and bear down deeper into something, just stop me. But I'm just gonna finish out reading all of these provisions of the 14th Amendment. Here is it says it's provision 255, but it's our fourth one. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. No state shall deny to any person who lives within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Provision 256 of the 14th Amendment, representatives in the Congress shall hereafter be apportioned according to the actual number of persons in each state. Provision 257 from the 14th Amendment, in calculating the total population for the purpose of apportioning representation, the census shall not include Indians unless they are paying taxes. Provision 258 of the 14th Amendment, and if the right to vote in any state or federal election is denied to any male inhabitants who are qualified to vote, the basis of representation for that state shall be reduced by the percentage of citizens so deprived of this privilege compared with the total number of qualified voters. Provision 259 of the 14th Amendment, no person shall be allowed to serve in either a federal or a state office who has previously occupied a federal or state office and taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, but has thereafter participated in a rebellion, the United States, or given aid and comfort to its enemies. The Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such a disability. Provision 260,
Wait,
the
wait,
fourth,
may I?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, that one that you just read.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like if they have been in office of some sort before, like, okay, say they are a attorney general and they've taken the oath and then they become a senator. Is that what that means? That they can't do that? Or please explain that one to me just a little bit.
Okay, let me read it only has 2 small paragraphs, too larger, too big. Let's see what the paragraph says. This provision gives each state and the union the right to exclude any person from being elected or appointed to public office who had been an official and taken the oath to uphold the Constitution, but had thereafter participated in the rebellion against the Union. It also gave the Congress the right to remove this disability by a 2/3 vote.
May I?
Yes, please.
That's why they try to say the J6 event was an insurrection and rebellion, and try to link
Mhm.
Trump to it, is they wanted to
Yeah,
say Trump was in rebellion against the Union, which is kind of
right.
ironic because that's what the Democrats were. Well, basically that part was to punish the Democrats that were in politics for their involvement with the Confederacy,
Hmm.
or to, if they came to power after the Civil War but were sympathetic to Confederacy, to also get rid of them again. There was a lot of nonsense going on in Reconstruction, where if you were, sympathetic to the South and not a carpetbagger, they'd immediately declare your election null and void and throw you out. And that's one of the reasons those wounds kept going for a couple generations. Real fast too, uh,
Hmm.
just an observation. The earlier provision about the Native Americans, where they're
Yeah.
paying taxes. Yeah, I figure with all the liquor they drink, they pay plenty of taxes, so that issue's solved. I yield.
Okay, I wanted to go back to this provision and finish reading this, and then if you want to talk about any other ones, we could go back to them too. But to finish this out, it says, it is obvious from this provision that the radical leadership of the Congress, which wrote the 14th Amendment, had very little of the spirit of healing and reconciliation exhibited by Lincoln or even by General Grant when Lee surrendered. As a result, the South was deprived of its experienced, traditional, and most responsible leadership. Except for the issue of slavery, some of this leadership provided the nation with some of its best elements of political wisdom prior to the war. The 14th Amendment was ratified July 9th, 1868, and on Christmas Day of the same year, President Andrew Johnson wiped out the effects of this vindictive provision by exercising his pardoning powers. He issued a proclamation of full amnesty, granting unconditionally and without reservation to all who had been engaged in that Southern cause a full pardon. Provision 260 from the 14th Amendment, debts of the United States which were incurred while suppressing insurrections and rebellions shall not be questioned, nor shall pensions and bounties for services rendered in connection therewith. There's one sentence about that. It says this provision gave any person with claims against the United States as a result of the Civil War the right to payment without question. Wow. Provision 261 from the 14th Amendment. Neither the United States nor any individual state shall pay any debt or obligation which was incurred in aiding the rebellion against the United States, since all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be considered illegal and void. Provision 262, no claim shall be acknowledged by the United States, nor shall any of the individual states for losses resulting from the emancipation of slaves or for losses suffered from trying to prevent the emancipation of the slaves. Provision 263 of the 14th Amendment. The Congress of the United States shall have power to enforce the provisions of this amendment with appropriate legislation. We do what we want, is what it sounds like to me. I yield.
Appropriate legislation. Isn't that cute? See, at that term appropriate,
It is really cute.
yeah, that's their wiggle room. That's their weasel speak. And let's back up what you were reading there, Dee. That is true. Remember, I just said how there's going to be, politicians being removed because of what's written in the 14th Amendment for rebellion and other charges. And then right there, your excerpt you read address that you could have like an old guy who's a politician and experience for maybe 40 years and how to be a judge or maybe a local level senator or something, and run things. And oh, well, he was part of the Confederacy. We can't have him. So they put some kid in there who doesn't know what he's doing and screws everything up. And that was, you know, that's the one thing by Johnson, at least giving that, I don't know if you call it pardons, amnesty, whatever, that proclamation. He was trying to, patch that problem, but that even got that bad It's a element of outside interests wanting to keep our country destabilized and putting a bunch of inexperienced hands into office who don't know what they're doing, and then they're totally subject to the whims of people around them. In fact, I would say, we can exclude Trump for a second because people are going to point at him, but let's take a look at AOC, John Fetterman, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, the rest of these young Democrats that have popped up on the scenes. All of them seem to be really inexperienced people and really young for running for office at their age, And we could go the other way with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, even JD Vance, they all seem to be like a young crop of politicians that don't have a lot of experience. I like that they don't have experience in the swamp, what have you. But there are those who have, you're seeing who comes in there bright-eyed, bushy-tail, idealistic, but has no idea how anything works, like AOC. Unfortunately, her ideals are also misplaced. Of course, her net value has increased. Don't get it twisted. Check out how much money she's been making. Conversely, I like what MTG has to say, but also her net value has increased. So are they really as naive as they've portrayed themselves? Or are they actually quick studies and they're making money off we the people?
Yes.
That's something we need to think about.
Jim Jordan too. I don't know if he's making money, but he was one of the young ones that came in all gung-ho.
Well, Jim Jordan's been up there for a while, though. Remember, he was there back when Paul Ryan had some sway, which he still does, by the way. He's the one basically in charge of telling Speaker Johnson what's what. So it's because he works with Fox News. So if they want favorable news coverage from Fox, they got to, play ball. Because Fox still reaches a bigger audience than any of the other news networks. So when everyone's all like, why does Trump talk about Fox News? Because he has to. Not that he wants to, it's because he has to. You want to get the word out to the biggest part of your base, you're going to use Fox. And then you'll probably use the internet. And then from there, the other stations will pick up whatever and spin it however they want.
I saw that Omar was being removed, whatever her name is.
Well, here's a thought. Did not some of these Democrat senators and congressmen, did they not openly get caught being involved with the BLM riots or with financing?
Yes.
The bill for some of these people. I know Kamala Harris was. So who else was involved in that scandal? And why are they not deported? If you're gonna be a threat to the nation, easiest way to deal with you versus making you live in a jail cell on a taxpayer dime and executing you is to deport you. What they used to call it exile, that was a biblical thing. You don't want someone in the city, you sent them beyond the city walls like lepers, and they got to make their way in the wilderness.
Yep.
So 14th Amendment, I don't know. I honestly, it's like it exists. We have it. But to me, it restates a lot of common sense stuff.
Yes. So one of the things I found interesting in the provisions that I had found was the debt. The validity of authorized U.S. public debt cannot be questioned. However, debts incurred to support insurrection or rebellion are illegal and void.
Repeat that?
The validity of authorized U.S. public debt cannot be questioned. However, debts incurred to support insurrection or rebellion are illegal and void.
Okay, so the federal government's debt, you can't question it, but if you want to kind of put a stop to that federal government. Those debts, oh no, that's a different issue. Interesting.
Yes. That's what I was like.
I don't know about the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So that would make any debts incurred from those you spoke of to support riots or whatever.
Well, that
No
see,
and void.
that's well, here's the thing. What's weird is, because Trump during those lockdowns, he gave the governors basically he let the governors expose themselves, and it was the
Mm,
Democrat governors who would not police the riots. The conservative states, South Dakota didn't have that issue, or Florida didn't really have that issue,
right.
but you go to Colorado, California, Maryland, you know that type of stuff. I reference Maryland because of Baltimore. Um, all that nonsense, was kicking off. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, if Trump was really this, hard, fascistic or domineering guy, he actually already is justified by that piece of the 14th Amendment. Go ahead and engage and wrap all those people up, which, people are saying that stuff has happened, that people are being wrapped up. If they're being wrapped up, then we better see some evidence of that, or as they like to say, habeas corpus. So
Yeah.
so in the interim, um,
What's
well, I had a nugget I was going to drop, and I realized with the 14th Amendment, we're kind of too far. We're too far away from the grand jury stuff for me to point out something. But if any of you guys have or haven't read it, look up Monellas on the grand jury. It was a book he wrote. I'll let you guys find it on the Wayback Machine or the National Archives or whatever. There's PDFs of it. Read through that. You'll see why assembling and forming your grand juries and so on is so, let's just say there's some levers you have. And if people need to be wrapped up by the police or the military or whatever, well, got to have the grand juries there help deal with that because, Dee's going to get going.
oh,
Dee,
okay. Thank you,
yeah,
Dee.
Dee had a,
Thank you for
well,
reading.
no, she did good. In fact,
Yes.
I kind of have something I want to do with her similar to that for a different project.
What's the other one besides habeas corpus? There's another one
Oh,
called.
there's like 6 or 7 writs. It's just as I've referenced, they've every state, thanks to the bar, is trying to make it where you can't do writs. I think that we're down to like 3 or 4 states where you're allowed to do writs. California, they finally screwed us over out here. Sorry for the yawn, but we have to go to an attorney to prepare the paperwork to request a writ from our attorney general to then begin the writ process of public officials. So, habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, quo warranto. There's like 3 other ones. So they all have different levers and tools. And again, the trick is to get those officials in a default, and then once they're in default, things are in your favor. But a lot of times, people want to issue those writs long before it's time to issue the writs. So that's been the problem: is people are using affidavits out of order or writs out of order, or they think they're assembled, but they haven't done everything correctly. And so the assembly they form is out of order or incorrect. If we're going to argue for due process of law, we have to do things correctly. And there is actually processes to following stuff. Hence, when you guys hear me reference 10 steps, there's a reason I'm referencing it, kind of giving you guys the roadmap.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're out of order. And you can pretend that's a judge banging his gavel saying that, because that's literally what it's about. I know that doesn't make me popular with the prepper crowd because they want to go Second Amendment right off the bat, but you got to go First Amendment before that Second Amendment. Not that the Second Amendment may not be used It sure helps enforce the First Amendment, but you gotta go with a pen before you go with a sword.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Of which, Bonnie, do you ever watch the Y Files?
I have, but it's been a while.
Okay. Well, they released a episode today. I think it's very crucial. Everyone who's in the chat and yourself and whoever, go view it. It's today. It's basically a episode on how to know you're being psyoped, and they're quoting a chart where you basically you have different check marks, things to check off that are equal point values, and it's developed by a group NCI. And actually, I found the PDF already downloaded it to my my drive and all that. And what you can do is you can actually analyze stuff. Heck, you want analyze what I'm saying, whatever. But you go through and you can actually like pick out whether you think a news story is psyoping you or not. Like I said this, I think, in the chat earlier, the babies and incubators from the Desert Storm. That particular psyop that got everyone to support Desert Storm to Desert Shield, it was a complete lie and hoax, but it hit every check mark in that time period. And then next they showed like COVID. And COVID had two different narratives, and both the narratives existing also served as a form of another thing you could check off in the PSYOP chart. So what winds up happening is if things score in a certain point range, you know it's a PSYOP. If they don't score in that point range, then it's like, it might be genuine news. So I thought it was kind of, a healthy thing to know about. And I'm going to be applying that to a few things later today or tomorrow, just to see what kind of results I get. So I thought I'd let you know. It's NCI. I'm forgetting the name of the guy who designed it, but the Y Files, they cover it today. And so that would be something too. Let's look at our Constitution. Is our Constitution a PSYOP? How about that one? Yeah, I went there with my thought process. I was like, huh. Like, some of us have said it is a PSYOP because people expect it to work and apply and so on, but they don't realize it doesn't automatically apply. Anything in law, because law is invisible, has to have people as the force of arms to enforce it. So you draft out and write out the law, and then the physical people enforce it. So I think you guys might enjoy that episode of the Y Files. And let's see, it's 8:07 my time. Do we want to wrap this up soon, Bob? What are you thinking?
Yes, I think that would be okay.
Yeah.
Put the link for backstage if anyone wants to come up.
Yeah, I'll hang out for a little while. And Wildlife, good hearing from you. Sorry if I'm so talkative. If you guys heard that can open at the start of the of me being on the panel, it was me cracking an energy drink. So there you go. Gorilla Mine Arctic Frost. Yummy, yummy.
Yep. Well, I think we covered a lot tonight. And
yeah, we were all
really,
over.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Well, no, thank Dee for this one. Like I said, you guys taught me tonight,
Dee,
and I learned more.
Good.
So I appreciate it. And appreciate having Watt up here, having Jerry or Al Bundy or Jason Schmidt or Echo or 420. There's so many of you guys that if I were to run down all your names, like all of you guys in the chat are great. You putting in your thoughts and your comments. And when I'm not running my gums, I do scroll the comments just to see what your thoughts and input are. And, some of you guys have some really great insights, and then some of you are really funny, and some of you, we're just happy to have you here. Al Bundy puts, dang, nobody cares about 4 touchdowns in a game anymore. Let me say, I can beat 4 touchdowns in one game, and that I had 5 pins in one wrestling tournament in one day. There you go. I pinned 5 opponents in one day.
Georgia
Yeah,
beat us
that
pretty
was.
good Saturday.
Oh yeah, the football games out there. It's a good escape when you can take it in.
Yes. Well,
You know,
college.
my entertainment of late has been what do you call it? Watching Monday Night Raw clips. You know, I don't need to watch the whole show. I just need to be aware that John Cena is about to retire. So it's like, okay, cool. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Dominic Mysterio getting to have a match with him the other night.
He's had the longest retirement tour I've ever seen in wrestling.
Oh, you should watch the Luchadors, dude. Or there used to be other people. Terry Funk used to do retirement tours, and that was the joke because it
Yep.
means you're no longer going to wrestle in that city or that town. That's the joke. So you may not you might be in a. I'm going to retire. I'll never wrestle again in Los Angeles, but I did wrestle in Orange County and in Anaheim, and
Yeah,
then in San Diego, and then in Yuma, Arizona, and then in Nevada, and over in Vegas. Yeah, they can milk it. And yeah, Cena's thing though, because there is a countdown and everything, that's in a way it's a storyline with or without him itself. It creates a sense of urgency. Now, if only the American people could take that from their sports, the sense of urgency and stakes and everything, and actually realize that those sports ballers, those paid athletes or entertainers, yeah, you're paying to make their life good, but who is it that's supposed to make your life good? You're putting your energy into them. Who's putting energy into you? And
Yeah.
if it's not your if they're not putting it, it's this thing I've always looked at because I came from that indie wrestling world stuff. I looked at everything as like competition with what I'm doing. So if they're not putting that back into you, it's like wearing another man's name on your back on a shirt or a jersey. It's kind of like you're branding yourself like you're their slave or something. Think about it.
Sure.
I mean, it's cool to have tribalism and have your fan clubs and all that, but there is a point where and we can even say that with our red hats for MAGA and our the pink hats for the what was it, the Me Too movement and all that.
Mhm.
Everybody wants
I
to
thought
have
that
their
was
garb.
Alabama.
Oh yeah, maybe that too.
I thought Alabama had the pink hats.
There's a lot of pink over there, but sorry, Alabama, love y'all, but the I gotta be careful I don't step on any toes. But
That's okay. I get the hate mail.
yeah, well, the thing at the end of the day though is imagine if people had this type of energy about their own public affairs. Like, hey,
Exactly.
I think somebody should be on the airport commission, or somebody should be, maybe even running the program that feeds the seniors during the holidays or whatever.
Yeah.
The lack of involvement, public service, civic engagement. That's like we used to be the nation that was known for that. We're still the nation that gives out the most charity to the whole planet, but
Yeah.
a lot of people are doing like armchair quarterback charity. And I'm gonna throw this your way. So Turning Point was, people thought of it as a charity. Charlie's doing good work and all that, and they're throwing money into it. Well, they've been examining the financials, and Charlie wanted to do a Doge audit on the financials, and someone came out in the last 24 hours, and it wasn't Candace. In fact, I don't think she's covered this yet. I think it was covered on InfoWars and on another show today. And basically, they found what looks like $8 million was washed. You have Turning Point USA, and then you have America's Turning Point, which was like set up like a shell corporation. So they would send the $8 million to America's Turning Point, and the documents for that company to be audited are missing.
Oh no.
So where's that $8 million is enough money that you could get a pretty good sharpshooter, if you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
there's some funny business there, and Charlie wanting to do an audit, and then his suspicions about the people that are Zionists around him and so on. And I'm hearing Southern California, we got a lot of Calvary Chapel out here. No offense to the Calvary Chapel crowd, but some of the people in that organization are a little sus, and more is coming out on them too. And
Wow.
it's a time for dark to light. Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe Charlie's passing will expose a lot of wickedness that's been hidden from us. And when that wickedness is exposed, I don't want you guys to lose faith, but you got to understand this is why setting up these organizations for profit to do charity is not public service. It's not what the Lord intended. You're not supposed to get yourself in the tax code and launder money and move it around so you can have a wage off of it. You're supposed to volunteer and help people out of the goodness of your heart, not as a professional lifestyle, but as just something you do on the day to day. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Maybe I'm hitting my head against the wall with this.
I get it.
But Jesus didn't run a mega church. Jesus had multitudes following him, though, but they were in the wilderness. You get it, guys?
Yeah.
He didn't preach. When he went to preach in the synagogue was already there. He wasn't fundraising for the synagogue.
Yeah, sadly, they turn into about money or cult mentality. Sometimes.
Well, I just hope that like with her thing, I hope she's not pulling a Jackie type thing. I hope that's the case, that she is innocent in all this. I think she's probably like 75% likely to be innocent, or the 25% part is they're saying you're gonna shut up and do what we tell you if you know what's good for you.
Yeah.
And some of the people around Charlie Kirk were the you're gonna shut up if you know what's good for you type crowd. That's what's starting to come out. So man, it's a weird thing because having seen them in person, like there's different people, you meet them in life and like their energy radiates across wherever they're at. They're a good person. Charlie's one of those guys, like when I met Rey Mysterio Jr. So, we got a lot of Americans who, they're like that, where they're like a touchstone of goodness, but we need more of us to be that, and I don't know if I can explain what's in my head properly with that, but I hope you guys catch on what I mean, that we got to do whatever it takes to get this republic back on track.
Yes.
And
as possible.
yeah. And I am watching the wrestling comments in the chat, and I'm gonna leave it alone. That's for another night. I'm in a little bit of a in a contemplative mood. We're talking about the 14th Amendment, ancient history. To some, we're looking at the passing of Charlie Kirk. We're in November. We got the holiday season coming up for that family, and here it is. He passed away. What in was it July or June? See, I don't even remember properly when it was that he passed. It was
the 10th of October.
Thank you. I didn't think it was July.
October.
Not October. I'm sorry. September.
7/10.
September the 10th, because the following day was September the 11th.
Oh yeah, 9/10.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not even gonna all this knowledge. See, this is the great thing with the internet. Now we're investigating the financials and everything. We're finding out more about what happened to him than what we have found in all these years about what happened to Kennedy. Amazing, isn't it? But we still, at the end of the day, have a slain American. And you know what? If people had done their job, that covered that venue or made sure the people around him were the right people and vetted them, if we actually had this republic running the way it should be, Charlie wouldn't have on these tours. That's something to think about, is that the call to restore this republic has been going on for a while, but people having to travel around to sound that alarm should already be ringing in everyone's hearts with what we've been witnessing since COVID. And instead, we're hoping, hey, Charlie, you're showing up, you're drawing a crowd, that'll change things. No, if that crowd just goes home, that doesn't change anything. You got to teach people to get involved, how to get involved, what levers they have when they get involved. Otherwise, it's just the Glee Club meeting. Tonight we educated a bit on the 14th Amendment. so people know not only that amendment exists, why it exists, how it came about, and what guarantees it gives people who use that amendment. And as we pointed out, how it can also be used against people who want to invoke it. Hopefully, with that knowledge, they can go and share that with others. But also, if they ever need to discuss it with someone, they can hold their ground and feel a little bit more confident that they know what they're talking about and can provide a leadership example when they make decisions based off their knowledge base. I yield.
All right, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and close this one down. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Indy and everybody in chat.
Heck of a closing rant. My apologies.
Y'all be safe out there, and we'll see you next time. God bless you.
It's never too late to be what you might have been.